My husband threw a glass of wine in my face in front of our friends and made it seem like it was my fault. I felt like the ground was sinking beneath me, but I kept calm and walked away. After he came home, his smile quickly disappeared when he found out The dim glow of the chandelier cast a somber light over the dinner table as I adjusted the napkin in my lap, the soft chatter of our closest friends filling the room with a semblance of warmth. Peter, my husband of 15 years, was in one of his moods again, his smiles a little too tight, his laughter a tad too forced. I had grown accustomed to these gatherings, knowing full well they served more as a stage for his performances rather than a night of genuine connection. As the main course was served, a succulent roast that filled the air with its rich aroma, the conversation turned to recent vacations. I mentioned our trip to Italy, eager to share the beauty of Venice, the serenity of the canals, the art that breathed life into every corner. But as I spoke, Peter's hand tightened around his wineglass, his jaw clenching ever so slightly each time I painted a picture too vivid, too joyful without accrediting him for the experience. He interrupted, his voice laced with a venom that only those closest to him could detect. Well, if Sarah had her way, we would have spent the entire trip in those overpriced gondolas, rather than exploring the real cultural sites I planned for us. The table laughed, brushing off his words as jest, but the sting was there, a familiar burn in my chest. I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, commenting on Lucy's new job or Mark's recent move to the city, anything to dissolve the tension that had started to prickle my skin. But Peter wasn't done. As the laughter died down, he turned to me, the charm in his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Oh, come on, Sarah. Tell them about your little mishap with the Italian barista. They'll get a kick out of that." I froze, the memory of my clumsy attempt to order coffee in Italian bubbling up, a moment of innocent confusion that Peter had twisted into a week-long joke at my expense. I opened my mouth to deflect, but before the words could escape, he hurled the contents of his wineglass against my face, dripping down my dress, a stark contrast to the pristine white linen. Silence enveloped the room, broken only by the soft clinks of cutlery being placed down, as our friends stared, wide-eyed, unsure how to navigate this sudden turn into cruelty. I sat there, wine dripping from my chin, the cool air of the room mingling with the wetness on my skin, my heart pounding in my ears. Peter chuckled, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "Always so clumsy, aren't you, Sarah?" As if it were my fault. His words were a dagger, but this time they did not find their mark. Something within me shifted, a tectonic plate of tolerance that had been ground down over the years, suddenly snapping into a new position. I stood, my chair, scraping back loudly, the sound a gunshot in the silence. Meeting Peter's gaze, I felt a power rising within me, a clarity that came from the shock of the red wine, now staining my vision in more ways than one. "Yes, Peter. Always so clumsy," I said, my voice steady. And yet, not clumsy enough to stay another day in this farce of a marriage. Turning to our friends, I apologized for the scene, my words sincere yet detached, a farewell to more than just an evening spoiled. I walked out of that room, the weight of Peter's gaze heavy on my back, but lighter than the burden I had just decided to leave behind. The echo of my footsteps along the quiet hallway felt like a drumbeat to a new beginning. As I shut the front door behind me, the cool night air greeted me like a long-lost friend. I walked, each step taking me further from the suffocating atmosphere of the dinner party and deeper into my own thoughts. My mind replayed the evening's events, not just the wine-stained climax, but the years of belittlement that had led up to it. Each memory was a thread, weaving a tapestry of realization that I could no longer ignore. I found myself at the park, where Peter and I had first met, the swings gently swaying in the breeze as if nodding in approval of my newfound resolve. I sat down on a bench, the cold metal biting through my dress, grounding me as I allowed the floodgates of suppressed emotions to open. How had I allowed it to go this far? How had I, a strong-willed woman with dreams and ambitions, become a shadow in someone else's show? As the night deepened, so did my introspection. I realized that Peter's actions were not just isolated outbursts, but a pattern, a systematic chipping away at my self-esteem, my identity. I thought about the times he had criticized my cooking in front of our children, the occasions he had dismissed my opinions with a wave of his hand, the countless small moments that, when pieced together, formed a mosaic of control and manipulation. It wasn't just about the humiliation at the dinner party. It was about every dismissive comment, every sarcastic remark that I had laughed off to keep the peace. Each instance had been a brick in a wall that I had unwittingly helped build around myself. A barrier that kept me from seeing the truth of my situation. The moon was a sliver in the sky, a thin beacon that seemed to illuminate my path forward. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges and consequences. But the alternative, staying in a relationship that stifled who I truly was no longer an option. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. Like waking up from a long sleep to find the house on fire, I understood that escape wasn't just an option. It was a necessity. I pulled out my phone, its screen a harsh contrast to the soft darkness around me, and began typing notes. Notes about everything Peter had done, notes about what I needed to do next. It was a plan forming in real time, each word a step away from my past and toward my future. I listed friends who would support me, recalled legal advice I'd once ignored because I never thought I'd need it, and began to outline the logistics of leaving. This wasn't just a moment of emotional realization, but a strategic awakening. I knew I had to be smart, to plan each move with precision and care. Peter was cunning, a master of manipulation, and I needed to be 2 steps ahead if I was going to outmaneuver him. As dawn began to break, the park slowly came to life. Early morning joggers nodded at me, a silent acknowledgement of my presence in their routine landscape. I stood up, my body stiff from the cold, but my spirit invigorated with a steely determination. I had come to the park a woman lost in confusion and hurt. I left it a woman with a mission, my resolve as clear as the morning sky. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, about finding the person I had been before Peter tried to rewrite my story. I walked home with a plan, a purpose, and a promise to myself. Never again would I allow someone else's darkness to extinguish my light. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the kitchen as I brewed a pot of coffee, the aroma a comforting blanket around my shoulders. As the coffee dripped, I flipped open my laptop, its screen illuminating lists and plans I had drafted in the dead of night. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day I began to reclaim my life. I started by organizing all the evidence of Peter's mistreatment. There were emails where he belittled my ideas, text messages where he criticized me unnecessarily, voice recordings of his tirades that I'd started to collect without a clear purpose until now. Each piece was a puzzle part of the larger picture of the toxic environment I had endured. I organized them meticulously, categorizing each by date and type, ensuring that if I needed them, they would serve their purpose flawlessly. As I worked, my phone buzzed with messages from friends who had been at the dinner party. Their words of support flowed through the screen, each message a buoy keeping me afloat. "If you need anything, we're here," said one. "I'm so sorry we didn't see it sooner," said another. It was both heartbreaking and heartening to see my pain acknowledged and my decision supported. I took a deep breath and dialed the number of a therapist I had researched earlier. It was time to heal, to talk to someone who could guide me through the maze of emotions and decisions that lay ahead. The phone rang, and a calm voice answered, a voice that promised a non-judgmental space to grow and mend. The conversation was a balm, and as I hung up, appointment scheduled, I felt a weight lift slightly. therapy was going to be a crucial part of my journey, not just for emotional support, but to rebuild the self-worth that had been eroded over years of subtle abuses. Next, I opened a new document on my laptop and began writing my narrative, not the distorted one Peter had told, but my own. I wrote about my dreams, my passions, the woman I wanted to be. It was both a manifesto and a map, a declaration of independence from the oppression I had lived under. I then reached out to a lawyer, a recommendation from a friend who understood the delicacies of divorce. The call was pragmatic, each question sharp, and each answer sharper. We discussed strategies, outcomes, and what I could expect in the coming months. The lawyer was a fortress of knowledge and experience, and by the time we finished our conversation, I felt armed for the battles. Ahead, I also began securing my financial independence. I logged into our joint accounts, my hands steady as I transferred half of our savings into an account only I controlled. It was not an act of spite, but of survival. I knew that financial security was critical in the uncertainty of divorce, especially against someone like Peter, who wielded money as both carrot and stick. With the finances secured, I spent the afternoon documenting more of my experiences. I wrote down incidents I had shrugged off, words I had forgiven, and the cumulative damage they had caused. This document wasn't just for the lawyer or the courts. It was for me, a validation of my experiences, a confirmation that I was not overreacting. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I printed every document, every piece of evidence, and filed them meticulously. My kitchen table, once a place of shared meals and conversation, was now my command center, the headquarters of my liberation. I ended the day with a walk, the neighborhood streets familiar yet different as I viewed them through the lens of a woman taking control of her destiny. The air was crisp, the sky a canvas of oranges and pinks, and as I walked, I felt more connected to myself than I had in years. I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to thrive. Returning home, I locked the door behind me, a symbolic gesture, but a powerful one. It signified the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. I leaned against the door, eyes closed, a smile creeping across my lips. Today, I had laid the foundation of my new life, brick by brick. Tomorrow, I would start building upon it. The week after the infamous dinner party felt like a whirlwind, a blur of emotions and actions as I set my plans into motion. But amid the chaos, a moment of serendipity arose when Lucy, one of my staunchest supporters and a guest from that night, sent me a text. "I have something that might help you," she wrote. Attached was a video file, and as I clicked on it, my heart raced with a mix of dread and anticipation. The video started innocuously enough, showing the dinner party in full swing, laughter echoing, glasses clinking. The camera panned, capturing moments of joy and camaraderie, but then it settled on Peter and me. There he was, the charming host, until his facade began to crack as the evening wore on. The video captured everything, his cutting remarks thinly veiled as jokes, the tightening of his grip on my hand under the table, his forced laughter that never reached his eyes. And then, the moment that changed everything, Peter throwing the wine in my face. It was all there, stark and undeniable. The silence that followed, the shock on the faces of our friends, and my own stunned expression before I walked away. Watching it was painful, yet empowering. Here was the truth, in vivid color, a truth that could not be rewritten or denied. I sat back, the video ending with the empty chair I left behind as I walked out. It was a powerful visual, a symbol of my departure not just from the table, but from the life I had been living. I knew what I needed to do with this video. It wasn't just a piece of evidence. It was a testament to my reality, a tool that could help me regain control of my narrative. The next day, I met with my lawyer, bringing the video with me. As we watched it together, her expression was one of professional neutrality, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of outrage. "This will be crucial in your case," she assured me, outlining how it could be used both in legal proceedings and in securing restraining orders if necessary. Emboldened by the legal backing, I decided to take a further step. While public shaming was not my goal, ensuring that Peter faced accountability was. I sent the video to his boss, the man who had laughed loudest at Peter's cruel jokes, not to seek revenge but to shine a light on the character of the man he employed. The email was brief, factual, and devoid of emotion. "I thought you should see this," I wrote, letting the video speak for itself. The response was quicker than I expected. His boss called me personally, his voice grave. "I'm deeply shocked and sorry you experienced this. This is not the man I thought I knew." He promised to take immediate action, and though it was a small victory in the grand scheme, it felt significant. It was an acknowledgement, a validation of my experiences from a figure of authority in Peter's life. With the truth now out there, moving freely in the world, I felt a shift in power. It was no longer just my word against Peter's. It was his own actions, captured and displayed for all to see. The video circulated among our circle of friends, and the support I received was overwhelming. Messages poured in, not just of sympathy, but of admiration for my strength in facing the ordeal. This newfound support bolstered my resolve. I attended group therapy sessions, sharing my story and the video, finding solidarity with others who had faced similar trials. The act of sharing, of turning my most humiliating moment into a beacon for others, transformed it from a weapon Peter used to hurt me into a shield I wielded with dignity. Each viewing of the video, each discussion about it, peeled away layers of shame and fear. I was not the woman in the video anymore. I was someone new, someone forged by fire and walking through it stronger than before. The narrative was mine, now, and it was one of survival, of truth, and of newfound strength. As weeks turned into months, the impact of the video and the actions it precipitated rippled outward. Peter was forced to confront the man he was in the mirror. The truth of his behavior exposed not just to me, but to his professional community, his friends, and, most importantly, to himself. The realization that I needed to secure my financial independence came to me not in a moment of fear, but rather in a moment of stark clarity. Sitting at my kitchen table with papers sprawled around me, bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, I understood that my freedom was not just a matter of emotional or physical separation, but financial as well. I started methodically, analyzing our joint assets with the precision of an accountant. It wasn't just about taking what I felt was mine. It was about ensuring a stable future, devoid of any financial ties that could pull me back into Peter's orbit. I cataloged every asset, noting which were jointly owned and which belonged to me prior to our marriage. Each entry on my spreadsheet was a step towards autonomy. As I sifted through the documents, I realized how intertwined our lives had been, not just at home but financially. Our savings, our investments, even our debt, it was all shared. This realization was daunting but also galvanizing. I couldn't allow my financial future to be another chain that Peter could use to manipulate me. I contacted a financial advisor, recommended by my lawyer, who specialized in divorce cases. In our first meeting, I laid out everything: my long-term financial goals, my immediate needs, and my concerns about Peter's potential actions once he realized I was severing not just marital, but financial ties. The advisor was a woman of sharp intellect and empathy, her advice both practical and reassuring. She helped me understand my rights and the best strategies to protect and claim my assets. With her guidance, I opened new bank accounts in my name, only transferring half of our liquid assets as advised. This action was not impulsive, but backed by legal and financial counsel, ensuring that everything was done above board, leaving no room for Peter to claim foul play. Securing my retirement accounts was next. I changed the beneficiaries and revised the terms, ensuring that Peter had no access. I felt a surge of empowerment with each form I signed. It was as if with every signature, I was reclaiming parts of my soul that had been unknowingly signed away over the years. The house was a more complicated matter. It was the biggest joint asset we had, and I knew that it would be a battleground in the divorce proceedings. However, my advisor laid out several options, ranging from buying out Peter's share to selling it and splitting the proceeds. Each scenario was weighed carefully, considering not just the financial implications, but the emotional ones as well. With the larger assets handled, I turned my attention to our smaller investments, stocks, bonds, and other securities. I evaluated their worth, consulting with my financial advisor on whether to hold or liquidate. Each decision was a calculated move in the larger game of chess my divorce had become. During this process, I also revisited my will and estate plans. It was a grim task, contemplating my mortality in the midst of reclaiming my life, but it was necessary. I updated everything, removing Peter completely, ensuring that my children and charities I cared about were the sole beneficiaries. It was a clear message to myself and the world that Peter was no longer the center of my universe. As my financial independence solidified, I began to feel a profound sense of security and possibility. I was not just escaping a toxic relationship, I was building a new foundation for my future. I invested in myself, taking courses to enhance my skills, attending seminars to expand my network, and consulting with career coaches to explore new, professional opportunities. This proactive approach wasn't limited to just accumulating assets or securing funds. It was about investing in my personal growth, my education, and my professional development. Each step was an investment in the person I was becoming, a woman unbound by past constraints. By the time the divorce papers were filed, I stood on solid financial ground. I had ensured that whatever the outcome, I would not be left adrift. I had learned that financial independence wasn't just about having enough money to live on. It was about having the resources to make choices, the freedom to take chances, and the power to dictate my own life's direction. The journey to financial independence was fraught with challenges and required meticulous planning, but it was also incredibly empowering. It taught me that I was capable of more than I had ever given myself credit for. As I signed the final papers that legally untied our financial knots, I felt a surge of triumph. No longer was I tethered to Peter by the golden chains of matrimony. I was free, financially and otherwise, ready to navigate the new life I had so carefully planned. The repercussions of Peter's actions began to ripple through his professional life shortly after I sent the video to his boss. It wasn't just about the moral implications of his behavior. It was about the risk he posed to the company's reputation. His boss, Mr. Anderson, a stern man with a strong ethical compass, had been visibly shaken by the video. The image of Peter, a senior manager, known for his charismatic leadership, doused in the stark light of reality, was jarring. Mr. Anderson called a meeting with the company's HR department, explaining the situation with a gravity that underscored its seriousness. He detailed the contents of the video, not just the incident itself, but the pattern of behavior it revealed. It was a moment of truth for the company, a test of their values and their commitment to a safe and respectful workplace. Peter was summoned to a formal review meeting. He walked into the conference room, his usual confident stride replaced by a cautious tread. The room was stark, the usual corporate decor seeming almost accusatory under the circumstances. The HR director, a woman of meticulous professionalism, laid out the accusations without embellishment. The video was presented. The silence after it played heavy with judgment. Peter's response was a mix of denial and concession. He tried to downplay the incident, framing it as a private matter that had no bearing on his professional capabilities. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear that his superiors were not swayed by his explanations. The trust had been broken. The facade of the impeccable leader had crumbled. The fallout was swift. Peter was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. The company's legal team was consulted, exploring the ramifications of his actions on the company's reputation and the potential for workplace harassment claims if his behavior was part of a broader pattern. As the investigation unfolded, more incidents began to surface. Testimonies from colleagues who had previously kept silent, intimidated by Peter's authority, now felt empowered to speak up. There were accounts of subtle but persistent derogatory comments, of credit taken for others' work, of a manipulative demeanor cloaked under the guise of leadership. Each account was a thread pulling at the tapestry of Peter's constructed image. The company conducted workshops and seminars on workplace behavior and ethics in the wake of these revelations. They brought in experts on workplace dynamics and psychologists to talk about the impact of toxic leadership. It was a transformative time for the company, a shakeup that went beyond just dealing with Peter. Peter's professional standing, once unassailable, began to deteriorate. Clients who had been loyal to his charm and expertise were reconsidering their associations. Partnerships that had been lucrative started to fray, the risk of association with someone of Peter's tarnished reputation deemed too high. The final decision from HR was termination. Peter received the news in a stark, unadorned office, the reality of his fall from grace mirrored in the empty walls. The termination letter cited not only the specific incident, but the pattern of behavior that the investigation had uncovered. It was a professional death sentence, executed with the clinical precision of corporate policy. The news of his firing spread quickly within the industry. Peter tried to reach out to his network, to salvage what he could of his career, but the bridges were burnt. The video, though never made public, became an open secret within his professional circles, a cautionary tale of what happened when personal failings spilled over into professional life. With his career in shambles, Peter faced not just the loss of his job, but the disintegration of his professional identity. He had climbed the corporate ladder with a mix of genuine talent and cunning manipulation. But now, he found every rung of that ladder splintered, each step he had taken up now a potential slide down. As for the company, the shakeup led to a period of introspection and ultimately renewal. They implemented stricter policies on behavior and ethics, established more robust channels for reporting misconduct, and committed to regular reviews of their corporate culture. It was a painful, but necessary growth, spurred by the incident that had so abruptly brought to light the dangers of unchecked power. Peter's fall from professional grace was not just a consequence of a single act of misconduct, but a result of a career built on a fragile foundation of deceit and intimidation. As his world crumbled, the lessons were hard learned, not just for him, but for everyone who had been a part of his sphere. As I prepared for the legal battles ahead, I felt a mixture of dread and determination. Divorce is never a simple matter, but with the complexities of our entangled lives, it promised to be particularly contentious. Armed with the video evidence and bolstered by the public and professional fallout Peter was experiencing, I felt empowered to finally stand up for myself in the legal arena. I met with my lawyer, a seasoned litigator named Ms. Allen, who had a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces with a firm but fair hand. As we sat across from each other in her office, surrounded by law books and framed accolades, she laid out the strategy. "We'll need to be thorough, but the evidence you've gathered gives us a strong foundation," she assured me, her tone imbued with both warmth and steel. The legal process began with filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, although the real differences were far darker than most. Along with the petition, I filed for an immediate restraining order, citing the dinner party incident and a pattern of behavior that I could no longer tolerate, let alone expose myself to. The court granted the temporary order without hesitation, a small victory in the long road ahead. As the case progressed, we delved deeper into the financial disputes, the custody arrangements for our 2 children, and the division of property. Each aspect was a battleground, with Peter contesting almost every detail. However, Ms. Allen was unyielding, her arguments backed by meticulous documentation and a keen understanding of family law. The proceedings were emotionally draining, I spent long hours with Ms. Allen, reviewing documents, recounting incidents of Peter's behavior, and preparing for my testimony. The courtroom became a regular backdrop to my life, its solemn decor and the judge's authoritative presence constant reminders of the gravity of our dispute. Peter, on his part, hired a capable lawyer who tried to paint a picture of a marriage broken by mutual failings, not just his misconduct, but the evidence was hard to dispute. The video from the dinner party played a crucial role, its impact in the courtroom undeniable. When the screen lit up with the footage of the wine being thrown, a collective gasp echoed through the room, and I saw the sympathy in the jurors' eyes. Testimonies from friends, excerpts from my therapy sessions, and financial records meticulously detailed by my advisor painted a comprehensive picture of a relationship marred by control and emotional abuse. Ms. Allen masterfully navigated the nuances of the law, tying emotional abuse to financial manipulation and legal strategies to protect my interests and those of our children. As the legal battle wore on, I found strength I didn't know I had. I sat in the courtroom, straight-backed, my gaze steady, as Peter's lawyer attempted to undermine my credibility. But truth, as I had learned, has a weight that lies cannot counterbalance. My testimony was calm and factual, and even Peter's cross-examinations couldn't shake the resolve that had been forged in the fires of our failing marriage. The judge's decision came on a crisp autumn morning. I sat in the courtroom, holding my breath as he laid out the terms of the divorce. The division of assets was equitable. Custody was granted primarily to me with generous visitation rights for Peter, and a substantial alimony and child support package was ordered. It was more than just a legal victory. It was a validation of my right to break free from an oppressive partner. Following the legal victory, I worked to ensure that all court orders were enforced. Alimony and child support. Payments were set up through official channels to avoid any direct contact with Peter, preserving my safety and autonomy. I also engaged a legal advocate to monitor compliance with the custody arrangements, ensuring that the children's transition was as smooth as possible. The divorce and subsequent legal wranglings took nearly a year of my life spent in and out of legal offices and courtrooms. But it culminated in a decree that was both a termination of a marriage and a declaration of my independence. I emerged from the process exhausted but empowered, with legal documents that were less about ending a marriage and more about beginning a new chapter of freedom and self-discovery. As I walked out of the courthouse, the decree in hand, I felt the weight of the past lift and the possibilities of the future beckon. The legal battle was grueling, but it taught me about resilience, the importance of legal preparedness, and the power of standing up for oneself. It was a profound lesson in the importance of legal action, not just to end a marriage, but to reclaim a life. The final confrontation with Peter was not like the scenes you see in movies. There were no raised voices echoing against the walls, no dramatic gestures under a stormy sky. It was quieter, more subdued, and far more powerful. It occurred on a chilly evening, the autumn leaves swirling around our feet as we met in the park where we once walked as a couple, a neutral ground that now felt charged with the end of an era. As I approached the bench where Peter sat, I could see the slump of his shoulders, the visible weight of his recent losses etched into his posture. He looked up as I neared, his eyes searching mine, perhaps for a sign of the softness he once manipulated. But I had closed that door firmly, the locks bolted by the legal and personal victories I had fought so hard to achieve. "Sarah," he began, his voice hoarse, likely from arguments lost and apologies rehearsed too late. "I've been thinking about everything, about how things went wrong. I'm sorry, truly." His apology hung in the air, thick and unconvincing. It was the first time I had heard those words from him, and they sounded foreign, misplaced. I took a deep breath, the cool air stealing my resolve. "Peter, your apology, while perhaps meant, changes nothing about the past. It's too late for sorries. Too much has happened, and too much has changed." I kept my voice even, my stance firm, projecting the confidence that I no longer just felt, but embodied. He nodded, looking down at his hands, then back up at me. I know I've made mistakes, big ones, and I want a chance to make things right. Can we try again? Start over? His question was a plea, a last grasp at a life he had squandered. Start over? I echoed, the idea so absurd that for a moment, I almost laughed. But this was no laughing matter. Peter, there is no starting over, not after everything. I've moved on. I'm building a life that's healthy, happy, and wholly mine. A life that you have no part in. His face fell, and for a moment, I saw the man I once thought I had married. But that mirage was quickly swept away by the reality of the man he truly was. But I love you, Sarah. I always have. Can't you see I'm trying to change? There was desperation in his voice now, a stark contrast to the control he once wielded so effortlessly. Love isn't just a word, Peter. It's actions. Your actions destroyed us, I said, my voice steady. And your change is something you need to do for yourself, not for me. Not as a way to win me back. It's too late for us. I'm not the woman you married anymore. I've grown, evolved, and I no longer accept the minimum. I deserve more, and I'm giving myself the life I deserve. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes finally beginning to understand the finality of my words. So, this is it then? He asked, a note of resignation threading through his voice. Yes, this is it. This is goodbye, Peter. Not just for now, but for good, I confirmed, knowing the power of my words was not just in their finality, but in their liberation. We stood there, the silence between us stretching out. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. With each step, I felt lighter, freer. The park, with its rustling leaves and fading light, witnessed the end of my old life, and the steady walk into my new one. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me in that chapter. Ahead lay everything I had fought so hard for. Peace, independence, and a new beginning forged from the ashes of my past. The final confrontation was not just a farewell to Peter, but a farewell to all the years of doubt, manipulation, and pain. It was an affirmation of my strength, a testament to my resilience, and a declaration of my newfound freedom. As I left the park, the cool breeze seemed to applaud my departure, the rustling leaves like a chorus of approval. The path before me was clear, lined not with the shadows of my past, but with the light of my future. In the aftermath of my divorce, the world didn't just open up. It blossomed. I found myself rediscovering passions and exploring opportunities with the fervor of someone who had been given a second chance at life. The transition wasn't instantaneous. It was a journey of healing, growth, and self-discovery. The first step in my new life was to solidify my career. I returned to school, enrolling in courses that aligned with my interests and professional goals. I pursued a master's degree in communications, a field that had always fascinated me, but which I had previously set aside for the sake of my family and Peter's career. The classroom became my sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild my confidence and expertise. My professors and classmates recognized a drive in me that was fueled by more than just academic curiosity. It was powered by my profound desire to redefine my identity. With each class, each project, and each accolade, I shed layers of doubt that had accumulated over the years. My academic achievements reflected not just my intellect, but my resilience. I wasn't just learning about theories and practices. I was learning about myself, about my capacity to adapt and excel. As I grew, more confident in my academic and professional abilities, I also started to rebuild my personal life. I joined clubs and volunteer organizations, connecting with people who shared my interests and values. These weren't just social gatherings. They were opportunities to weave a new social fabric, one that was supportive and enriching. I also rediscovered my love for painting, a hobby I had abandoned early in my marriage. I set up a small studio in my apartment, where canvases and paint tubes replaced the memories of my old life. Each stroke was a testament to my emotions, my journey, and my recovery. My art became a dialogue with myself, each piece a step towards understanding and expressing the myriad feelings that had once been stifled. Financially, I was more stable than ever. The divorce settlement had been fair, but more importantly, the financial independence I had cultivated allowed me to make choices that were all my own. I invested wisely, saved diligently, and even began giving talks on financial literacy for women, turning my past challenges into a platform for empowerment and education. Professionally, I started a new job at a renowned communications firm. My role allowed me to leverage my newly acquired skills and my life experiences, contributing to projects that were not just professionally satisfying, but also personally fulfilling. My insights and unique perspectives were valued, and I quickly became known as someone who could turn challenges into opportunities, not just for myself, but for the entire team. My children, who had been my rock throughout the tumultuous times, flourished in the stability and happiness of our new life. We became a team, their youth and enthusiasm for life inspiring me daily. We traveled, explored, and shared experiences that were built on joy and discovery, rather than tension and avoidance. As I built a successful career, I also found peace. I attended therapy regularly, working through the scars left by my marriage, turning wounds into wisdom. This peace wasn't just the absence of conflict, but the presence of a profound contentment that permeated my life. Dating again wasn't a priority, but as I grew more comfortable in my new life, I found myself open to the possibility of love. It came unexpectedly, in the form of a colleague who had become a friend and then something more. He was kind and understanding, someone who not only respected my past, but celebrated the person I had become. Together, we discovered a partnership based on mutual respect, deep affection, and shared values, a stark contrast to what I had known. As years passed, my life seemed to bloom with possibilities. I gave speeches at conferences, sharing my story, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a narrative of empowerment. I wrote articles and books, helping others find their paths through adversity, using my experiences to light the way for those still in the darkness of their struggles. Looking back, I realized that my journey wasn't just about reclaiming my life. It was about redefining it. Each step, each decision, and each day was a brushstroke and a masterpiece of my own making. A life not determined by my past, but designed by my dreams and desires. In the years following my divorce, I often reflected on the idea of victory. It wasn't a victory born from vanquishing an opponent in court, or even from the settlements and agreements that had been stamped and filed away. It was a victory of spirit, a deep, resonant freedom that permeated every aspect of my life. This sense of freedom was not just about living without Peter. It was about living without the shadows of doubt and control that had clouded my days. I had emerged from the darkest periods of my life, not just unscathed, but radiant, filled with a new energy that propelled me forward. I immersed myself in new experiences with a vigor I hadn't known I possessed. I traveled to places that had once been mere names on a map. Each destination was a celebration of my independence, each journey a testament to my resilience. I walked the streets of Paris, the trails of Machu Picchu, and the beaches of Thailand, each step a reaffirmation of my freedom. My professional life flourished as I took on challenging roles that pushed the boundaries of my capabilities. I became a consultant, advising firms on communication strategies, drawing not only on my academic background, but also on my personal experiences of reclaiming my voice. My work was not just a job. It was a mission to empower others through effective communication, to help them find their voices just as I had found mine. At home, I cultivated a sanctuary that reflected my new life. My apartment was adorned with artifacts from my travels, books that inspired and challenged me, and artwork that was a vivid tapestry of my inner journey. It was a physical manifestation of my transformation, a space that was unequivocally mine, free from the remnants of my past life with Peter. My social circles expanded to include people from all walks of life, each bringing their own stories and lessons. I hosted gatherings that were a blend of cultures and ideas, my home buzzing with laughter and meaningful conversations. These were not just parties. They were gatherings of minds and spirits, each guest contributing to the rich tapestry of my social world. Philanthropy became a significant part of my life. I set up a foundation that focused on empowering women who were striving to break free from abusive relationships. Drawing from my own financial resources and the network I had built, I worked to provide not just shelter, but also legal aid, counseling, and job training. It was my way of giving back, of turning my trials into a source of strength for others. As I looked at the world around me, I saw it not as a place from which I needed to shield myself, but as a playground of possibilities. I took risks, tried new hobbies, and indulged in the pleasures of life with a light heart. Whether it was skydiving, learning to dance salsa, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon in my garden, I embraced life with an openness that was both exhilarating and healing. My relationship with my children deepened in ways I couldn't have anticipated. As they grew into adults, they saw not just a mother who had protected and loved them, but a woman who had fought for her essence and won. Our conversations were rich with shared insights and mutual respect, and I marveled at the beautiful individuals they had become, shaped in part by the struggles and triumphs we had shared. Love eventually found its way back to me, not as a necessity, but as a complement to the life I had built. He was someone who celebrated my independence as much as I did, who shared my passion for life and my desire for growth. Together, we explored the world and each other, our relationship a dance of equals, each step a celebration of our individual and shared journeys. As I stood on a balcony overlooking the city one evening, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the rooftops, I realized that my victory was not just in escaping a bad marriage, but in embracing a good life. The freedom I had fought so hard to attain was not defined by the absence of Peter, but by the presence of me, my dreams, my passions, my peace. This freedom was my victory, a victory not against Peter but for myself. It was a declaration of my right to happiness, my capacity for growth, and my ability to transform adversity into opportunity. As the sky turned from gold to shades of twilight, I felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me here, to this moment, to this feeling of utter peace and boundless possibility.